I hope you guys have been well. Yeah, so I had the baby with me, and I was gonna do the video with him wrapped up because he was asleep. But then I fed him, and then he needed to be burped, and he got a little too much air in while feeding. If anyone has any tips about that, he got too much air in because the latch kept breaking, and so Papa's taking him for a walk while I record this because in this RV you can hear everything. And plus, we try to go for a walk every day and get some fresh air, so it's good that he's getting that. But yeah, so for this video, I really wanted to, I felt a burden on my heart to talk about how I had a all-natural pregnancy. So a lot of people talk about natural birth, but what I mean by natural pregnancy is I didn't really go to the doctors. I didn't take prenatal vitamins. I didn't do the tests. I did it very old-fashioned, if you will. And so I wanted to talk about how I did that because when I was pregnant, I had to do so much research to figure out how do you do this. I had to gather this arsenal of videos from people like Bridget Taylor, who I believe she still supports a lot of like hospital tests and things like that. But she has a lot of really good information out there. Different Christian sources, talk to people I know. So yeah, I have like a little playlist that I suggest to people of videos that I had gathered, but I also learned a lot from experience as well. And just sometimes I would talk to a bunch of people and we never had the same opinion, but I'd pray about it and I came to my own, conclusions and they worked out. So yeah, I just wanted to share that today. So basically, when I first found out I was pregnant, I knew that I wanted to do a home birth and I wanted to go as natural as possible. One lady I'd watched on YouTube, Barbara O'Neill, she was on this side of the extreme in that she had unassisted births for all her babies, and she didn't touch a hospital once. And then we have the other extreme of, going to the hospital constantly, doing all the tests, things like that. So I was like, well, I'm leaning more towards Barbara O'Neill, totally unassisted, but my husband reels me back a little bit and says, I don't think so for this first one. And so I think that was good for the first one and stuff. So I did want to do a blood test. I knew that to just make sure everything was normal because I do a plant-based diet. And you can get so much of what you need from that. However, a lot of the soil is depleted today, so it's hard to get as many nutrients as you would have back when. So you need to usually supplement with more, natural things. And I'll talk more about that later about my diet, what I did for that. But yeah, so right off the bat, when I told the hospital that I was pregnant, because I had just done one of those pee sticks, they said, we want to confirm that you're pregnant. We want to run all these tests. We want to do the test to make sure you don't have gestational diabetes. We want to give vaccinations while you're pregnant, all this stuff. And I said, and you have to take your prenatal vitamins. And I said, no to it all, except for the blood test. And in California, you do so many blood tests that are apparently not optional. But that's only taking out blood, so I didn't have a problem with that. But they have to check for like STDs and stuff like that, I'm pretty sure. A whole bunch of stuff. And they made it seem at least like it wasn't optional. But so I went to the hospital and they were really made me seem like I was an abusive mother for not doing the other stuff. And so that's all I did. I did the blood test. And then I went in to meet with the doctor and she said, okay, we're gonna do the, I'm blanking out on the term, ultrasound. We're gonna do the ultrasound now. And I said, I'm not gonna do any ultrasounds unless there's something clearly wrong, like let's say something comes up with the blood tests. And she was not happy about that. So went home and started doing more research. And when I became pregnant, I decided I wouldn't eat any fried food. I quit processed sugar. I only did honey and maple syrup, basically. And made sure to incorporate salads every single day, or almost every single day. And so that was very important to me on that front. And then this was in California. Then we moved to Arkansas. And in Arkansas, I realized how important iron was while you're pregnant. So I started looking up good natural sources of iron. So I ate spinach every single day, pretty much, cooked or raw. And we bought a cast iron pan, so I cooked in that. And then we were still thinking maybe I'm not getting enough. So I started taking chlorophyll, which is the green stuff in plants, and it has amazing iron in it. It actually has really amazing everything. Our body typically is very acidic these days because of the food we're eating, which creates a perfect environment for things like cancer or overactive bacteria that presents itself as like thrush. So it actually alkalizes your body, and it's an internal deodorizer. So if you have really bad breath or bad armpit smell or something like that, usually it's because your body's acidic and it alkalizes it, so it's a deodorizer. So I started taking that, and then I didn't want to do molasses because to me that was processed sugar, blackstrap molasses. But we were like, we gotta make sure I'm getting enough iron, so I did do the blackstrap molasses. So that's what I did for my iron. And even if you were thinking of taking prenatal vitamins, they typically, a lot of people don't recommend, who recommend prenatal vitamins, don't recommend taking iron vitamins because they're really hard for the body to digest. It's just not a good way to get it. So they suggest, maybe incorporating more foods that have high iron. Another really important thing that prenatals are good for, prenatal vitamins, is, oh wait, I don't think it's in prenatal vitamins. It's in our salt, iodine. But I do Celtic sea salt, and so that doesn't have iodine. And iodine is essential for brain growth in babies, in utero and out. And so a really good solution for that, iodine is best absorbed through the skin. So we got something called Lugol's solution on Amazon. And you drop it on your wrist and rub it in. And if it absorbs super quickly, keep taking it. And as soon as you see that it's staying on your skin for a long time, you either don't have to take it anymore or just take it very lightly. But that's what you do for iodine. For protein is extremely important while you're pregnant. We ate legumes, so different beans, lentils, what have you, typically twice a day. And then I also would do a protein powder if I missed out on one of those legumes or something like that. So the mix of, tons of protein and iron, I noticed, I've talked about it before, I started growing like bangs. Like my hair started growing super fast. All this new baby hairs, and I was like, ugh. I think I was low in protein and iron, so I still do those things today. Iron is also super important to continue after birth for the first 6 months, I believe, because your baby is rapidly growing during that time and they need the iron. But the iron content in your milk drops after the first 6 months, and that's why a lot of baby food is supplemented with iron. However, it drops for a reason. It's because they're not growing as quickly during that time. And somebody said, does God make mistakes with our milk content? And he does not. So it's like that for a reason. After the first 6 months, you don't need to start taking more iron because it's dropped in your milk, or you don't need to supplement your baby with iron. They don't need as much then. So that's what I did for the iron, protein, iodine, all that stuff. And I just kept up with the healthy eating and all that because me and Samuel agreed we can't have a home birth if we're not doing everything we can to have a healthy pregnancy, because hospitals are amazing when things go wrong, and things have a higher chance of going wrong if we are not doing everything we can to live a healthy lifestyle. So we were really firm on the diet. And I might wrap back around to diet later. Another really important thing was exercise. They say that labor is called that for a reason. You have to get your body prepped for like a marathon, because that's kind of what it is. And so I would try to do squats every day. If I have another baby, I'm going to do a lot better about this. I was not as good about the exercising, and I think that's one of the reasons that I probably tore and wasn't as prepared as I should have been for labor. But anyhow, tried to exercise every single day and do squats. I'd walk up and down the driveway and just stay active. But a mistake that I made was I was kind of like, oh, I'm pregnant now, I can take it easy, I shouldn't lift too much. And it's true, you have to be careful with lifting too much, but you just want to stay very active. So yeah, that was really important. But yeah, so for a natural pregnancy, the other things, going back to that, ultrasounds. So ultrasounds are very pushed. However, they still don't, it's not studied enough to know the effects that the ultrasounds have on our babies. They have done studies in the past on animals, and when they did ultrasounds on the pregnant animals, the babies were born with defects. However, those studies were done, I think, like in the 70s or something, and they used to use higher like waves then, or more radiation, not radiation, whatever it is. They used a higher amount of it back then, and so it kind of makes sense that the animals were born with issues. However, I believe that if you are doing everything that you can and you're praying to God, that God will take care of it. Now, there's a fine line between presumption and faith. And so if you are not doing everything you can and, not exercising, not eating healthy, not doing everything you can to create an optimal environment for the baby, then that might be a good option, an ultrasound, to make sure that things are okay. And if during the pregnancy my midwife picked up on something, then I would have done an ultrasound, but I don't believe in just doing it just because. And they're finding it's very dangerous when people do the ultrasounds to get a picture of what their baby looks like, because that has to be there for a lot longer. And it's all just so you can see ahead of time, but that could be damaging the baby. The blood test. So I did the first blood test, and after that, I was like, I think I'm good. I'm just gonna keep eating very healthy, and I didn't have any issues. Something else that people might wonder about is, what do you do about the folic acid? People say if I don't take enough folic acid, all these bad things are gonna happen to my baby. Once again, if you are eating really well and properly, then I don't think you have to worry about this. They have actually linked people taking folic acid, vitamins while pregnant to the cleft lip. Because of the high amounts of folic acid, it can't, like, the skin can't separate or something like that. So you can look into those in the studies, and I'd look on, scholarly articles and stuff. But yeah, I just did not worry about that. I had faith in God that I was, the Celtic sea salt has so many minerals in it. Everything that we were eating was, and we gardened, and so we had some of our own produce. We had produce from our neighbors and friends from church. So we were eating things that were really good, and God blessed us. Let's see. So at the hospital, the other thing that they will push is they want to see if you might have gestational diabetes. The way they do this is they give you this sugary drink to then measure your blood sugar levels. The sugary drink they give you has some really nasty stuff in it, and I was like, I don't want to do that, and I'm just not going to worry about it. But my first midwife, she suggested if I don't want to do that, I could just drink some like grape juice or something like that, and she would measure it that way. Or she has one of those like diabetic, like you poke your finger and it measures it, the blood sugar level. She suggested doing that for 3 days, and you measure it before your meal and then after, and I think like an hour after and 2 hours after. So we did that for 3 days, and my blood sugar was perfect, so I didn't worry about it again. So with this first pregnancy, I did a few more things, just because I didn't know how my body would react and all that stuff. But if we have another pregnancy, I don't think I'll worry about that stuff as much. Let's see. The other things that they might push at the hospital is cervical exams. So we decided we did not want to do cervical exams. It doesn't really tell you much about, you could be, 10 centimeters and not actually be in active labor. And so, but doctors will really push this. But it can introduce bacteria. It can accidentally set you into going into labor, prematurely. So there's a lot of dangers with it, and I just don't see that it's necessary. So we decided we wouldn't do cervical exams unless it was absolutely necessary. However, with my midwife, it had been like a few days of me having, symptoms that I might be going into labor, but no, it didn't progress into anything. And she had asked me, have you felt, up there? And I was like, no, but I don't think there's a head there. I feel like I would know. And I went into the shower and I felt a head finger deep. And I was like, this is my first time. So I was like, is that a head or like what is that? I don't know. And so with my midwife, we decided to do a cervical exam just so she could confirm if it was a head. And she confirmed it was a head and that I was dilated and things like that. And then hours later, I went into labor after I'd done some vigorous exercise to speed things along. So yeah, people talk about labor a lot, but we really wanted to make sure we achieved a natural pregnancy. Um, and some other things we did while pregnant, I made sure I absolutely got enough sleep every night, 8 to 9 hours, and I took naps during the day because I was really tired. Drank tons of water. That is extremely important while you're pregnant. Um, just made sure I wasn't exposing the baby to anything. So I didn't take any ibuprofen, Advil, any medications or anything like that. And actually, if you are like properly hydrated, so if you're not low in magnesium, things like that, you typically won't get like leg aches or headaches or things like that. I did start taking magnesium, the Calm supplement, while pregnant, and that actually helped me a lot because I've always had like chronic leg aches, and it went away, and it helped me sleep at night. So I think I was low in magnesium. And let's see some other things. I kept a very positive attitude. There's a quote I want to read, but words are so powerful, and everything we do can affect the baby, including when they're in us. And so I want to read this quote by Ellen White real quick on this. It's very good. Every mother may understand her duty. She may know that the character of her children will depend vastly more upon her habits before their birth and her personal efforts after their birth than upon external advantages or disadvantages. The mother who is a fit teacher for her children must, before their birth, form habits of self-denial and self-control, for she transmits to them her own qualities, her own strong or weak traits of character. And so something I've always struggled with, and it became very difficult when I got pregnant, was temperance. I really struggle with overeating. The way that I grew up, it was finish everything on your plate. And also, the women in my family were praised if they could eat. They'd say, ooh, I like a woman that can eat, and things like that. So I grew up associating overeating as a very good thing. So it was very difficult for me to not overeat, but I did not want to transmit that to Shiloh. And so while pregnant, I tried very, very hard and prayed so much. And I have a little book full of quotes to help me from the Bible and different quotes like that to help me have more self-control. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I achieved a natural pregnancy. I hope I'm covering everything. My brain's a little bit scattered right now. But if you guys have any questions about that, if you're pregnant or you know somebody who's pregnant and they're like, well, I have a question about this. What do you do about, doctors pushing this or things like that? But yeah, I basically went to the doctor once for blood tests, and that was really it. And other than that, I lived a very healthy lifestyle as much as I could, and I had faith and prayed to God a lot, and that was pretty much it. And I educated myself a lot. I read a lot. Bridget Taylor, she's a doula. She's so good on YouTube. I would watch like 2 or 3 of her videos every day, pretty much, to help prep myself. And there's really good books out there. I recommend Child Guidance by Ellen White and Adventist Home. Those are very good books as well. And yeah, I don't think there's any other supplements. I highly recommend the Celtic sea salt. If you are worried about high blood pressure while you're pregnant, that's another thing they might ask or worry about. And with your midwife or at the hospital, they might check your blood pressure a lot. If you're having regular table salt, like sodium chloride, that does raise your blood pressure. And if you're not drinking enough water, a bunch of things can raise your blood pressure. But the regular table salt is really bad for us. And so I was just using pure Celtic sea salt towards the end of my pregnancy. But if you go to like Costco or something like that and you see sea salt, it says sea salt, but it's white and it flows freely and it just looks like regular salt, it probably is just table salt. Or if you see the pink salt at Costco, I believe that's also just regular table salt. But if you're unsure, you can always call or Google the company and look at the nutritional list. If it's Celtic sea salt, it will have tons of minerals. If it's regular table salt, it will just have pretty much sodium chloride, maybe a few others. And so, yeah, that stuff is really bad. If you inject that straight into the vein, it will kill you. However, sea salt, they used to use that as a blood transfusion during the war because it so matches our body's own ion balance. And so I highly recommend taking Celtic sea salt while you're pregnant, or Himalayan salt. Celtic sea salt is best though. You can order a really bulk amount on Azure Standard is really good. I think you can get it on Amazon as well for a pretty good price. But yeah, those are my main tips. And if you guys have any questions, please comment or email. This is a subject that I'm very passionate about. All right, thanks guys. God bless.